what is fear? What is that feeling when you get what I now know is an adrenaline rush? Am I crazy, with all the things I do? Maybe I am.
I'm the same. When I done my military parachute course, I thought I was the dog's bollock.
And I landed on the other building. I managed to escape the police from that building.
George, how are you, brother?
Yeah, very well, mate. 2023, time's going quick, very quick, but
Well, good credit to you. I mean, you pack a lot into a year, don't you?
Feel like I have to. The idea of sitting still is far more depressing and aggravating than actually doing things. So I think that's probably the driving force, is just the fear of being still. It's not so good when you're trying to get to sleep, but once you're up and ready and going about your day, it can be very useful. I'd lived in the UK. I'd done everything I wanted to do in the UK, the Shard, lots of base jumps. And it felt like I was kind of, Groundhog Day. And I just thought I was same information, same coding, same place. I was like, right, I need to get out, actually get out into the wild. And I watched a really good film called Dirtbag. Goes about his life climbing and taking on projects and not really having a place to live. And I watched that and I was kind of like, you know what? There's kind of purity and beauty in that. And I found that in Berlin, just couch surfing, going about my projects, ticking off places in Germany. And I've definitely felt some sense of normality in that.
Do you have a favorite place in Europe? Are you familiar with any of the languages or anything like that?
Well, I mean, Berlin's my favorite place. I found a home away from home in Berlin. I get off the plane, and every time I go into the train station, I see the yellow train, the smell, the German language. I get a tear in my eye. It's such a special place to me. It's got so much to offer: the people, the parties, the train surfing, the climate, the base. It's just heaven on earth. And it's this idea of freedom. It's a very where weird is normal is actually quite refreshing to me. I lived in London for a bit, brought up in Oxford. Everything's a bit too square, if you know what I mean. And then I go to Berlin. I was like, oh yeah, this is this is home. So yeah, that's my favorite place for sure.
Yeah, it's quite happening in Berlin. A lot of people settle in Berlin. It's quite interesting when you think that was behind the Iron Curtain back in the day. And it's turned into quite a happening sort of place.
Well, yeah.
George, do you get? I wouldn't say fed up because you've got too good head on your shoulders for that. But do you have a lot of people say to you like, "Oh, dude, I could never do that," and I mean that must be a big part of what you deal with on a daily basis.
I mean, it's been a part of my life ever since I've been cognitively available to the world. Is this, I've as soon as ever since I remember, I was always been fascinated by fear. I couldn't understand how another human being couldn't have this fascination of what is fear? What is that feeling when you get what I now know is an adrenaline rush? But back then I was trying to discover all these chemicals in my brain and happiness and sadness and all this kind of stuff. And I was exploring it through different means. So climbing was one of them, running was one of them, fighting was one of them. And I was just fascinated by what it is. And a lot of people, they look at it as, oh, it's crazy. But for me, it's just normal. This has always been the way. So it's just normal to me. Sometimes I question, am I crazy, with all the things I do? Maybe I am, but I wouldn't say reckless. Yeah.
We should point out, shouldn't we, that, I mean, I love the whole adventure thing. We'll come on and talk about that. I guess I've done a couple of base jumps because I've jumped from a helium balloon. I don't know if that counts as a base jump, but you do that.
Either one of the skydive base jump, but you know, you've probably felt the idea of jumping into static air. You know, like you jump out of a plane, it's like it's moving air. You kind of balance kind of straight away, but you with a balloon jump, you would have felt that sort of surge, I guess, and that's a very special feeling.
Yeah. The crazy thing about the balloon jump is it's nowhere near as scary as doing a bungee jump. I don't know why.
Probably because you could see the ground. Like, I mean, yeah, like I jumped off a pylon on Monday, and you're on the edge, right? And you're looking down, and that it's so close. You're so close, and it really is the act of committing suicide and saving your life in the process. It's like you're there looking down, and that's your death, and you jump and you look down and you see the ground rush up to you, and you have all these, I mean, time is so elastic in these moments. Like it's only 2-3 seconds of free falling, but those 2-3 seconds are so absorbed, it's like you're 30 seconds deep, and then when it opens, it's like I'm alive and fucking landed, and it gives a feeling like no other. And then you get this overwhelming sense of fulfillment where nothing in the world matters, present, future, past, and you're just present in one single moment. And to share it with other people is also amazing. And to have it yourself, it elevates your consciousness on a different trajectory. Yeah,
it's interesting though, isn't it, when you look back at a lot of let's just use the term daredevil, a lot of them do end up creaming in. How have you reconciled? I mean, you can see some great guys that are having great jumps and they're doing wingsuit and then suddenly you get the bad news that it's all over.
Well, I think it was yesterday, Ken Block, the rally driver, just went in on a ski to do. The way I process it is all these so-called daredevils, extreme athletes who do go in, they never go in on their cutting edge, most prolific number one stunt, climb, jump, or whatever. There's always the one they've done a fair few times. It's easy to them in comparison to what the much harder things they've done. And it's this idea of complacency, which I've been very aware of since doing these sort of things. There's been times in my life when I was in my teens and I was climbing stuff, right, felt complacency and it almost went very, very wrong. And I've learned from those, and I'm taking the base jumping very, very slowly, like the progression extremely slowly, and also having fear. Fear is the number one tool of survival. You need fear because it keeps you alive, it keeps you sharp, it keeps you aware. So the way I process it, it's complacency, keep that in check, keep your ego in check. Don't feel the need to compete with others, just yourself. So I do a lot of what I do solo because I have like a competitive little demon inside me where if I'm with people, then maybe I might switch my, desires a bit. So I tend to do everything solo. And if I do base jumps with people, I want to make sure they're like much higher sort of skill level than me, because I don't want to feel any sense of it's now a competition sort of in my head. It's something which I want to put completely away, because I think egos kills, like it's one of the biggest killers with this kind of stuff.
Sticking on this subject, I want to go back to the beginning, obviously, because your story's just incredible, mate. It's just incredible. For those of us that have done a bit of parachuting, skydiving, am I right in thinking you've got no reserve because you're too low to deploy it anyway? Is that Am I right there?
Yeah. I mean, there was certain sort of jumps that it wouldn't even work because it's too low. Even if you had a reserve, it just wouldn't come out in time. The way I see gear, and I've had by the way, this whole processing has taken a long time for me to wrap my head around. The whole idea with gear is if you pack it correctly, you do the rigging right, it's just physics. It's all it is. It's physics. If you're meticulously squared away with every single fold and you've done it properly, you run it by the book, then like it just won't go wrong. It's physics. So I've had to overcome this gear fear, and I've only been base jumping for just over a year. So like I had to really overcome this fear of my gear. So the story with this is I jumped with, I did a week base course with one of my mentors, Tim Howe, was actually an ex-Royal Marine, and he's absolutely meticulously detailed, pioneering base mentor. And, I was lucky enough to go under his wing and learn from him. And I come back from that 1 week trip in France, and I felt so confident with my skills. And I took my base rig and I was like, right, well, let's go jump off an antenna solo, no one else there, first time actually being fully solo. Climbed up this antenna in Braintree, Essex, and I got to the top, super confident, flung my legs over, looked to the horizon, took a deep breath, and couldn't flick the switch. And I was there like, fucking like, what's going on? Like I was in France, jumping every day, doing like good jumps. I'm confident. I know I packed it right. I couldn't flick the switch. And I was there for 2-3 hours. Like, I saw this bush. I was like, oh, well, maybe if I jump and it doesn't work properly, I can, at least there's a bit of cushioning. Like all these thoughts, I'm getting off the antenna. And I drove around Essex for a bit, and I was trying to work out why couldn't I just jump? And then I thought, okay, just get back on the antenna, get to the back to the top, looking down, looking up. Can't do it. Another 2 hours up there. I went back to this antenna over the course of a month, around 6 or 7 times, trying to just jump, and I couldn't do it. And I got this epiphany where it was like, well, the reason I could jump in France and I can't jump now is the fact that I'm completely solo. And if I was in France and something wasn't right, then Tim Howe, my mentor, he clock it, or someone else will clock it. And it was this idea of being fully accountable of every single action and decision you make. And I started to really also understand that I feared the gear. I really feared the gear operating properly. So I started to write down all my irrational fears and all my rational fears with the gear. All the irrational ones I wrote down, I put a big cross over it, put it to one side. It's useless. Rational ones, such as some kind of malfunction or tension or whatever, I look at it, explore it, detail it, square it away, both mentally and physically. And then, after doing that, and I really sort of separated these fears and really put them down. I went back to the antenna probably on the 8th time, got halfway up, and instantly as I'm rigging up, I'm thinking, yeah, this is the one. I just knew. Got to the top, jumped, landed on the knees, crying, broke down because I overcome this little mental battle, this mental thing about gear. And I kind of learned from that whole process, going back to what we said originally, it's physics. Like if you can just do everything right, it will come out right. And as long as you make sure you haven't done anything wrong in the rigging or, then, you can trust in it. Yeah.
I tell you a couple of funny things. Well, I say funny, it's actually really not funny, but I'm never going to get the chat. Friends at home, this is a podcast, right? We chat between ourselves. This is not an interview. A lot of people on podcast, George, they think like I'm here to interview you. And it's not. It's like I'm never going to meet. I mean, potentially I might never meet you again, right? And I want to share my shit with you, and see what you think of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there was this awful situation. I did my advanced freefall course in Florida, there was one situation at the that they were telling me at the skydive base where someone had got so much into the camera work, which is a real big thing again, isn't it? You know, you do your skydiving, that's top notch and that's great. But when people get into the camera work, it becomes an art in itself. And this person had got they were so focused on their camera equipment, but they went out the door without their chute on.
You know,
yeah.
There's that tunnel vision thing. Like it's only the task exists, the camera work, and people. I mean, I've heard stories of these kind of things before with people jumping or whatever, and so focused on getting the shot that they lose focus on actually what they're doing. And you know, it's certainly. Yeah, it's certainly. I mean, especially now with like social media, the modern age, and people always want to get, you know, good footage and all that sort of stuff, and it should never really get in the way of the progress and what you're doing. So when I first started base, I'm still a new boy in the whole thing, so I only started a year ago. But when I first started, I didn't post anything about it on social media or anything. Until I felt like I was comfortable in a position where I could actually do it, and then I started publicizing it a bit more. I think, you know, cameras certainly link to the ego, and I've fallen victim to that at certain times in my life where you kind of get involved in sort of trying to capture it a bit too much. But now, you know, I am at an age where I sort of kind of see it as not a necessity, but part of what I do. But also I'm very transparent with the idea of that, you know, cameras and the idea of trying to get a good video, a good shot can also lead to your death.
Well, the thing is as well, is if you're not filming this stuff, that's like a string of your bow that's cut, isn't it? Because you want to promote yourself.
Exactly, yeah. And there's also something about memories fade, but footage never fades. You can always have a piece of footage of me, whatever, climbing something or jumping something, or that you can always have that photo, take it to your deathbed. This is, you know, part of you. But with memories, they fade. And I think for that reason, footage is extremely important, because then you can always have it. And I do in myself try and promote the idea of trying to get it shot well, so that I can have this piece of footage for the rest of my life. And that's something which is very important to me. Yeah.
I'd say another funny thing you might be interested in is, because I wasn't qualified enough, I was just doing the AFF course. Obviously someone else packed my chute for me, and they get paid to do that, don't they? And there's lots of elastic bands involved and stuff. But they were telling me that one time they went up and they just did a whole series, like a whole afternoon of jumps, where they just didn't pack the chute at all like that. They just shoved it into the backpack, you know, into the canister, the holder. And they said not one time did it not deploy.
Yeah. I guess it's physics, really. I mean, they call it trash packing when you sort of really it's like just a messy pack job. And I think with skydiving, it's like I think you could get away with that more because you got so much time and all the rest of it. My mentor said a good phrase to me: bullshit baffles brains. And I kind of keep that in my head when I do pack my rig, because if I do it neat, if I do it sort of packed straight, then like when I'm on the exit and then suddenly I'm having like, gear fears, like, hold on, you just tick those boxes. It's nice and straight. Like, put that fear aside, just focus on the jump. And so it's like, I think you could probably get away with trashing it and it'll open and all the rest of it. But at the same time, it's like, a lot of it is just mitigating fears when you're on the exit point and stuff.
That being said, George, what differences do you have in your base jumping setup than say I would have done when I did my free fall course. Do you have any?
I mean, well, so I mean, with a free fall course coming out of plane skydiving, it's very different in the sense of, I mean, like the gear is different. So the speed of which, I mean, it depends on what kind of jump you're doing, if you have a slider down or slider up, but sometimes the deployment will be much quicker. So let's say you're jumping out of a plane really, really high. It might take it's to avoid you in whiplash and opening, it will be a much slower deployment. But if you're jumping from something static line 35 meters with a base rig, it's going to open fucking really quickly. So like there's obviously that difference. Jumping out into relative wind, so you sort of balanced into the wind, so you don't get that like feeling of your body speeding up in air. But also it's a whole different, I mean, body position as well. There's a different body position with skydiving and base, but it's just a whole. I never really got the skydiving stuff. I didn't enjoy it as much as the base jumping, and that's mainly due to the fact that there is an element of absolute freedom and rawness with the base jumping. Like you can drive around the country and find an object, and if there's a landing area and the winds are right, you can jump it. And I think that's like something super special. I struggle with the going to the skydiving place and signing this piece of paperwork and doing this and listening to this person. And I definitely have a I don't know, not an issue, but a feeling of being uncomfortable with some form of authority. So I like the feeling of being totally alone and going to something and jumping off it. And I think that's probably one of the sort of special differences about base and skydiving is the absolute freedom you have with it. Anything I've ever done, I wouldn't say I'm like necessarily like super gifted person. Like I've always had to overcome some kind of level of fear, and even for my first base jump, I had to really for a good 2 weeks mentally just gear myself up to do that. And I certainly wouldn't be doing again in the first one. So I take my hat off to those sort of people who just got that sort of sixth sense to their body, and it's amazing.
I'm the same. When I done my military parachute course, I thought I was the dog's bollocks, because I found all the groundwork easy. I was coming into land one time and I could hear the jump instructor on the ground. They shout up at you with a loud hailer, right? He's going, number 39, release your lift webs, right? And I'm there with my lift webs, my rear lift webs pulled right down. He's going, number 39, you're in the wind, release your and I'm looking around going, what fucking idiot is number 39? What a twat. And of course I'm not realizing I'm number 39 and I'm shooting forward at like fucking 60 mile an hour or something, right? And when I hit, oh my God, I hit so hard. I was almost instantly unconscious. I was about a hair's breadth from knocking. My helmet hit the ground so hard. Friends at home, what it is the wind takes you either this way or this way, right? Well, it can take you this way or this way. To compensate, you pull down on the opposite strops to spill air from your canopy to slow you down. I thought I was slowing myself down and I'd completely got it wrong, and I was pulling on the total off. So I was doubling my speed.
I've been a manic insomniac my whole life, mainly because my mind is just spinning. And I remember I'd be up all night, like writing dreams, first person to do this, or youngest person to do that, first person. I just have a massive list of all these dreams and goals, and I just pace up and down my room. And one of those goals was the Shard, which I put down on paper around 13, 14 years old, and didn't really think much of it until I got to 19 and did it. And that was like my first sort of like, oh yeah, like maybe I'm actually what I put in my head when I was younger. But it's like, I don't know, mate. Like I look at the way I live my life, and like it's kind of, it's quite it's very extreme, and like a lot of people who live this kind of extreme life, they might have had a bit of trauma or something. I never had any trauma, but for some reason, like maybe I have some kind of chemical imbalance or in my brain. I think that's a reasonable sort of explanation to the way I behave, because I've really tried to trace back my whole life and try and understand why I am the way I am, and I think that's becomes the only sort of logical explanation to me. So, you know, it was a blessing of a childhood, but I've always needed chaos in my life ever since I've been young.
You said something about when you jump from one building onto another. This is base jumping now, friends. Yeah. You said you'd seen it in a Johnny English film, right?
Yeah.
And that planted the seed that you weren't going to forget, right?
No, I couldn't shake it off. This is the thing about me, mate. I don't forget. I struggle with shaking things off unless there's been action to it, and then I can bury it. So, I mean, it's an absolute blessing and a curse because, well, it's a curse because it's certain things inherently like haunt me a bit. And like, I was, yeah. And unless I've done something, then I can sort of change it. But, it's also a blessing because I won't let dreams go. Like I won't let the idea of a goal go. And yeah, I remember watching the Johnny English film I mean, it's so simple. I mean, it was comical. It wasn't anything like some kind of stunt I saw. It was just, it jumped from some kind of helicopter and they landed a building. I think as a kid, I saw that. I was like, that's fucking cool. I'd love to do that at some point. and there I am. I went up this building in Berlin, the tallest building. And then my dream, it was like, I just saw it. I saw the exit point. I saw the building. I was like, that's it. That's it. That's what it all meant. That's what it all meant. This, you jumping from that scene in your head, you planted emotion, you attached to it, and now you're seeing it. This is all right. This next 2 months, this is it. Like you're doing this. And I went, yeah, the 2 months I went to the middle of Germany, went to these wind turbines, jumped off, practiced, visualized the fucking landing and all that kind of stuff. Saw it in my head hundreds of thousands of times. And then I got that one done and I landed on the other building. I managed to escape the police from that building. And, you know, I went and had a coffee. I watched the police run around like a gang of idiots, circling the thing, trying to look for me. Had my coffee, smoked a cigarello, just chill, you know, looked at it. And it was a beautiful moment. It was such a special moment. But the issue with these like extreme fucking like moments you get and your whole dream, you think about it and train for it, and then you get it done. You have a 1 week, 2 weeks of absolute euphoria, but then that's inherently starts to fade. And then you start walking around the fucking world, like kind of feel like you're in a zoo and you're the animal. You're like, you fucking just there, like, you know, what am I doing now? And I've learned that this is quite a common sensation to have. So I just get back on the saddle and pick the next project and just make sure there's some kind of desire to move towards that. Just keep moving, because the worst times of my life have been when I've reached such almighty highs, I've achieved certain dreams, and then the feeling then wears off, and then you're just left with like, for the point, you know. But then you just get back into it and then you realize there is a point. When you do a jump like that, when someone like myself, I'm watching it on your video and I'm watching it thinking, right, where's he going to land? All right, he's going that way. Oh, hang on, he's coming towards this building. No, he's not going to. No. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Boof. And is it easy? Because I've never done this kind of base jumping. Is that easy to judge, George? Because of ground rush and everything, I just wonder if it all gets a bit confusing. So I firstly did countless calculations to see if it was actually feasible, and it was well and truly feasible in terms of altitude and where I could turn and all that sort of stuff. Then I accounted for all the different types of wind directions and landing patterns of which could make it work, and the speed of the canopy and how the wind couldn't change that. And, you know, I sort of looked at all my numbers and said, yeah, this is totally feasible. And then I got to work. I got preparing. I jumped, you know, I spent couple of months in the middle of Germany. Just I knew someone who had the technician keys for these big old wind turbines. So just basically lived in a wind turbine for 2 months, jumping it, visualizing it, and it got to the point where like I just knew that like the calculations were good. I knew that with the right wind speed or no wind, I have the abilities to either sink the canopy, line it up, turn it at the right time, the reaction times. I just knew everything was totally feasible, and still scared. These certain things, like I woke up I remember waking up that morning, and I was kind of like staring at the scene and like, what the have you got yourself into? Like, you think like is this, are you going to miss the building? You're going to go off and there's electricity tramwires, you're going to go off there and big gust of wind and this and that. And you have all these thoughts, and then you get on top of the building, then suddenly that just goes. And then you left with absolute focus. And there's almost this feeling of total invincibility and freedom of like, you're so in tune. It's like, the idea of death, you no longer fear death. You no longer fear death. And, maybe 2 weeks you did, but in that moment, and it's an incredible feeling that you've overcome that. And yeah, obviously when you jump, it's just you're passenger to the process. You're no longer consciously doing things. You're just like your body is just intuitively doing it, and that's from the months of visualization and preparation and training. You're just a passenger to the process. You land, and there's also a sense of you've been here before because you've visualized it so much, and yeah, you land, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it's surreal. It's like this idea of you've gone to places where you've sort of been reborn. You've explored death, and then you've landed, and now you're reborn, and it's a very overwhelming sense of just elevated consciousness, and it's just
I get it, and I know people watching will get it. I think a lot of people probably won't, but that's why we do these things, isn't it? So George, how did you progress then from climbing as a youngster to climbing the Shard? What was that? How did that come about?
Yeah, so my route into climbing was very unconventional. I wasn't the sort of person who, your dad put you in the climbing gym and you lived in the climbing gym, or you were in the mountains and you were climbing up the mountain. I just had a desire where, like, the way I saw the world is I'd walk around the world and I look at something a bit, I want to climb that. And that's how I did it. It was an impulse thing. So from a very young age, like, I just climbed absolutely everything. And it progressed. So it was started off with just really just climbing the school roof or trees, whatever. And then I started looking at cranes. I'm like, I want to climb that. So I started climbing up cranes. And I was like, okay, well, I'm up now I've done that. Like, what's next? So let's hang off a crane. It was a logical sort of next step. And then, let's do this. And then it just progressed and progressed and progressed. And I always had these dreams. Like, when I was 13, I saw the Shard for the first time. So it was on the big list of potential things I could do in this life. And then, I was over my teen years, was exploring lots of different things: ultra marathon running, boxing, everything I can get my hands on, which scares me. And then by the time I was 18, I was like, okay, like, let's explore this Shard thing. Let's see if it's feasible. I turned up and I did my first recce. And in my head, it was like, this is the actual access to start the point of the climb, like, doesn't seem at all feasible. So I got back home and I got onto Google Maps and I looked at it from different. I was like, actually, if I get there and there and there and there, then maybe it is feasible. And then that started this whole 8-month year just thing of absolute obsession. It was like, I just needed, there was no other, it was needed. And it took me to like, almost the level of obsession was so strong. It was like almost like borderline psychotic. Like it was like I suddenly started to really, like, everything about my life suddenly just sort of faded away. It was like like I kind of lost touch of reality a bit. It was just manic, like madness, like this one thing which needs to be done. It was like, I don't know, like you could call it OCD, or I don't really know what it is, but it was just one single thing. And it was, and I had the plan. I had to work out the access, the infiltration, all these sort of things. And you know, eventually 8th of July, I climbed it.
And in October, he was sentenced to 6 months in jail. On Friday, after serving the customary half of his sentence, he was released. He says prison was tough, but he won't let adversity extinguish his spirit.
Tell us about the prison while we're on the subject, and then I want to come back to the actual climbing. I reckon you got a bit of respect in there, did you?
There was certainly elements of that. Absolutely. Like there was, I mean, that you could definitely utilize that. Although, you know, like this particular prison was H&P Pentonville, which is notoriously violent, and, you know, stabbings and kettle attacks and people slitting their wrists and all the rest. It's just a common thing. Become very desensitized to it quite quickly. But yeah, you know, it definitely helped in certain senses. But at the same time, like I was warned by some of the prison officers, like make sure no one tries to like utilize you as like a high profile prison or anything like that, or try and manipulate you and all that sort of thing. You got to keep like watch of where you're at. But incredibly fascinating. Like I would sit on the pipes with a 70-year-old psychopath who did an acid attack and murder on his neighbor, and I just be Louis Theroux, and I just sort of interview him and try and understand why he is, and I had these just ridiculous conversations with some really violent psychopaths and people who generally mentally, you know, and it was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating. And like it was a very interesting experience.
How did you get arrested? How did that come about?
So it was, my case was a civil case. It wasn't a criminal case. So you got the civil court, criminal court, public interest, dealt with the police, you know, and that was kind of put under the rug very quickly. Like I didn't actually get arrested. Like, they just kind of put it under the rug. It was like, you've done this thing, you know, there we go. You let go. It was a civil case, which is private prosecution, which was, you know, I don't think the criminal courts, the civil courts in the UK are extremely corrupt, because if you have enough money and enough power, you can get the right lawyers, the right judge. The knot was tied before I even went in the courtroom. I could tell. And I'm sure the judge was tipped off to it, and they sort of either made a deal or whatever. But yeah, like it was the top knot was tied before I went in the courtroom, and it was private prosecution. So essentially, I breached an injunction by climbing the building, some kind of trespass thing. So you're now contempt of court, and so therefore, we can imprison you. But I don't have a criminal record. I don't have any of that stuff. But the courtroom, it's the doghouse. You know, it's like, you know, you got all these words and languages you don't understand, and they've thrown all these things at you, and you just got to sit and take it, I guess.
So you didn't, when you got up to the top of the Shard, you didn't get arrested then? How did you get down? So from the viewing deck onwards, it's open top, like it's open terrace. So I just went inside the building, and to be fair, credit to the police, I was expecting a much more brutal response. Very lovely people, you know, they were actually very decent, and I had a good conversation with 2 to 3 police officers, I shook my hand and shook theirs, and then I went off and they went off, and it was really just quite simple. I mean, I had a quick sort of meeting with the Shard manager, and that was it. Yeah, just went off. Yeah. Why would they want to do that? I mean, is that just to put people off doing it in the future, or is it like a PR thing? Or
I think it's an ego thing. I think it's like, you know, this is our thing. You know, that's not this. I just think it's a big old ego thing. Like you've done is like, they can't sit still with the fact that someone's just accessed our building. Let's just get him, and that's PR. We've done that. You made it. So I don't know, man. Like it means absolutely nothing to me because I just got an experience of going to prison. So I was happy to have that experience. So it means absolutely. I haven't got I'm not bitter to the whole thing at all. It's just interesting how the process sort of works itself out.
How many buildings have you climbed now?
Good question, mate. Like maybe 20. Depends. Some are more. So we're talking about like proper free soloing, like kind of, major sort of one, probably around 20, 25, I would say. But then like in terms of like minor ones, then in the hundreds for sure. But
what about if you get like halfway up? I don't know. Let's just say you get fucking knackered, or you can't find any more handholds. Is that ever a thing, or is that?
So I don't think I'd get to the point. Like if I'd properly done the reconnaissance and preparation, I feel like there won't be something I won't necessarily reach halfway and get fatigued, but what could happen is you get to the floor 70% of the way up the building and you suddenly realize on this floor something which you couldn't have noticed down on the ground, that it's like, I don't know, the screws is not as strong as the other sort of placements. And I had that in Copenhagen, Radisson Blue. I was climbing, and it was this big it was vented building, and I climbed. I was like, it must have been 20 fucking 15 meters below the top, and it was steady. And then I put my hand into this vent, and I pulled it out, and the fucking came with me, and I'm there like it wasn't screwed on properly, and I was there like, okay, well, I've got a decision to make. Well, ego's telling me it could hold my weight. I've just got the right there. It's 15 meters below the top. Like I could get it to the top, and there I am just holding on. Like, like, do I do it? Do I not? And then obviously sense takes over and thinks, well, let's just climb down. And those vents were really sharp. I remember being cut up, blood on the hands, and I worked my way down that building, descending, and I got to the bottom, and the Danish sort of police sort of dealt with me from there. And but like that happens. Like that happens. You reach sort of spots where you just realize something which you could not have planned for, and Are
you not worried when you get to that point that you're so exhausted that you can't climb down, or is that not an issue?
I think there's something you give someone no choice, like death or decision,
or climb down.
It's like your body. I think your body goes to a pretty special place. Like I'm sure you felt this with ultra running. Like when you feel like you're. Like, you said, I listened to your podcast last night of shin splints, broken leg, running, and sometimes you just even when you're done, like there's a bit more in the tank, like that. There's just
there's probably a lot more before death. Let's be honest. Is there any building that's like impossible to climb?
I like you say at the beginning, it's like I never say never. Like I'm sure if I isolated everything into one building, I could take. I never say never, but I know. I mean, with what I do, the reason which gets me up in the morning is the idea of doing something which is different, hasn't been done before, and that's what excites me. I'm no interest of being the best climber in the world. I just don't think that's what my reason is for being on this planet, is to try find things which haven't been done. So there's a lot of buildings to that point, to the end, is that there's a lot of buildings which I couldn't do, and others may be able to do, and I'm totally okay with that position as long as I'm finding things which are unique projects.
Tell us about the train surfing.
Yes.
This is a bit double-edged really, because we had a couple of Marines when I was serving that were train surfing in Thailand. and the train went under a tunnel and they got deaded. Sorry, I'm not laughing. Well, but it's just, I don't think they expected that, right? You know, what's it all about?
Yeah, well, I mean, my initial response to that is, well, with all respect to them, they should have done better reconnaissance. Like, if
their reconnaissance would have been in the bar.
Yeah, well, that's it, mate. Well, that's it. Berlin's a hotspot for metro surfing, train surfing, and a lot of people have died in Berlin, and I can't count for any of them which have been just decisions of which they could have avoided. Every train surf, every route I will do, I'll walk from one station to the other station and I'll check absolutely every part of it. I'll see there's a bridge, I'll see there's wires, I'll see what there is on that route, and then I'll pick a landmark straight to it. So, okay, when I see this tree, that's the time that's the time you should signal to your brain that when you go around that corner, there's going to be a bridge. So make sure you go down. And train surfing is incredibly easy to do, and that's what makes it dangerous, is that all you have to do really is hop on top of a train, have a bit of balance, duck when you need a duck, and that's that. But so, you know, it tracks people who, I mean, there was a 16-year-old who died in Berlin doing it. You get on the train, it's like this sensory overload. You're on top of a moving train, and he looked around, he was looking around and just creamed in because he got hit by a traffic light just on the edge of the train, and dead on impact. And you know, there's another lad who basically done the same, did 6 routes around Berlin, ducking under bridges on this last bridge or the last route, just didn't duck low enough and hit his head, spanked him, impact, dead on impact. So, you know, I'll keep, you know, whenever I do these train surfs, you know, I'm always fully aware of what's going on. My eyes are straight, looking forward. I know what's coming. I've already planned it. I'm watching what's coming, and, you know, duck when I need a duck, and enjoy it as well. It's the most. It feels so wrong but so right. It's amazing. I love it. It's I really love the train surfing. It's super special, and I don't know if that's because I have this feeling of like going against the normality of society. I think there's some kind of thing going on there where, like, don't want to be normal, and there you got all these people in the train doing their normal shit, and I'm on the top. It's like I think there's like an element of that in me. So I just love the train surfing.
George, do you get funded for any of this? I mean, to travel around a lot costs a bit of money, and to buy a parachute's probably £3,000 now or something.
Yeah, so my money is not by any means consistent. It's I'm always on the hunt for it. The income mainly comes from either sponsors or media. So I did a bit of work with Channel 4 where I did have my own series where I was exploring bare knuckle boxing, lift surfing, and all these sort of things. But that comes and goes. It's not like that's not my career. So I had to find sponsors and attach them to projects. And when I get that money, then I start trying to put it away into places. I'm very close to finally getting like an actual ambassador deal where I get a monthly salary. Very close to that, but until then, I'm sort of scratching the barrel, and I have been for the last month. But until I get these ambassador deals where it's monthly income, then it just seems like much more sustainable. But yeah, when I was in Berlin, doing my nomadic thing, like I was keeping costs low, very low. You know, sleeping on floors, doing my, just keeping it low, and certainly doable.
Have you got a Patreon?
I don't know. No.
Oh, you should start one of them. You might be.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it's worthwhile. I looked at people who have bigger social media presences, and I just didn't see that it was. I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know. I probably.
Well, I should say it's been good for me. God bless you, all my Patreons. You know, it's just people that like you, basically, as a person or as an artist or as a contributor, or that like they want to support you, and people have been very, very, very kind, and so we've got a rapidly growing support on locals, and I couldn't do what I do if it wasn't for those beautiful people. I couldn't do what I do, and someone in your position I know you can live for 500 quid a month.
It's certainly workable. Yeah. I think it's a good idea. I think we'll get to it for sure.
Yeah. I think, and also, dare I say it, you probably appeal more to young people than I. You've got that. Yeah, I mean, everyone's playing Xbox to get the experience that they don't understand. They're never going to get from it. Tell us about your TV. That was awesome. I was watching a bit of it this morning.
Oh, thank you.
Was it George's Illegal Adventures or something?
Yeah, George King's Illegal Activities was the second series I'd done. The first series was George King's Adrenaline Addicts. I'll start with the first series, Adrenaline Addicts. I explored base jumping with Tim Howe, who's now my sort of main mentor and beacon of knowledge and guidance with the base jumping, and then cliff jumpers and a bare knuckle boxer called Rico Franco, of which was, the one episode out of all the things I've done, which really took hold of me, was that the episode with the bare knuckle boxer. It was really special. It could, just similar mindsets and just, inspiring.
He'd been really ill as well, wouldn't he?
Yeah. I mean, he's been on his deathbed and found a way to nah, that's not happening. And still fights with a lostomy bag. So, he's very special, and I keep in communication with him.
George, are you like me? Like, you just like to try your hand at something just to know that you've done it rather than try to master it, if you know what I mean.
Certain things, absolutely. Yeah. Certain things I just want to tick it. Certain things I want to develop it and really become something of it. And then other things, I just want to see what it's like. Curiosity, curiosity.
I want to pick your brain on something. All right.
Yeah.
Caving. Yes or no? Yes or no?
Well, I actually did that as part of the second series, Illegal Activities. We went down a cave, like a mining sort of cave, and I'm not someone who gets claustrophobic, so it wasn't like a issue to me. It's not. I mean, I tried it. I won't go out and do it solo. I won't spend time building the skills to become it and really do it. But I tried it and I got off on it. I thought it was cool. Yeah, I liked it. Yeah.
I mean, when you're in Marines training, you do the endurance course, right? You got to crawl, and it's. I think it's a bit different now. Sorry, no disrespect to my brothers out there that might have gone through training more recently than me, because they're not dinosaurs. but literally, when I did the endurance course, there was these corrugated iron tunnels. They had a stream directed through them. Right, so diverted rather, to go through this corrugated iron tunnel. The tunnel itself was only about 2 foot high, and at parts of that tunnel, the landscape had caved it in, so you had to like get on your back and crawl through the bits where it had collapsed.
Shit,
and for most of the tunnel, well, for quite a lot of it, you were literally like that above the water, and there's all this stuff about keep your weapon clean and there's that bullshit. Chuck your weapon as far as you fucking can, right? Just let's just get through this and live, right? The weapon, right? It was terrifying. It wasn't. No, that's a load of bullshit. I never got. It didn't faze me whatsoever. I just knew I had to get through it. And because I was that focused, fear didn't come into it. But I tell you what, when I look at caving, I guess what we're talking is claustrophobia, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that is something that I have felt in my life. I think I'm probably better at it now as that I'm older than I was in my 20s.
It's a feeling of being trapped, being helpless, I think.
I don't mind to be, if I'm trapped in a cavern underground, that's fine. As long as I've got room to move around. Yeah. And if I got some sandwiches, even better. But it's that not being able to move. That's the thing that gets me. That I can't move. I can't move. That.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh. Yeah. No, I get it. It's feeling of being trapped and helpless, and I can understand it. But it's also, when I did it, it was kind of just it's quite amazing. Like you look at a mound and it's so unassuming. Like you're outside, you're seeing it in one dimension. Then you get inside it, and then suddenly you've got this whole different dimension, and you're underground. It's like a whole different world, and it's like there is something very special, and I totally resonate with people having tried it as part of this episode. Like I totally resonated with these people who are obsessed with it. These guys who just get in underground and see it from a different, you know, the world in a different way. I get it. I do kind of understand the sort of fulfillment from it.
Promote yourself. Where can people find you? Obviously, Instagram, Shard Climber, folks.
Yeah, Shark Climb, that's right. You know, if you want to watch my Channel 4 series, you can find that on YouTube. George King's, you know, Adrenaline Addicts, Illegal Activities, Channel 4, and then George King on Facebook, and no, it's 2023 is a year which I've been working towards for a good 3-4 years. So a certain thing in this year which we'll get done, and it'll be very. I
guess you don't want to divulge that. No, that's fine. No. I get it, mate. I get it. Yeah. You gotta stay zen.
Yeah.
Well, listen, mate. I really hope we can do something together in the future.
I really hope so too.
Yeah, I'm kind of honoured. I'm kind of honoured. Like my mate is the biggest daredevil in the world.
Amazing, mate. It's an absolute pleasure to be.
Mate, it's just great you've come on. It's great you've come on, George. Stay there, don't go anywhere. I'm just going to turn the recording off. But everyone at home, I really hope you've enjoyed this. This has just been one of my most enjoyable podcasts. You can tell it's all just it's all boys' own stuff, you know. all this stuff I want to ask questions about, and bit of stuff I've done myself, you know. But just say, if you can like and subscribe, friends, would really appreciate it. Massive love to you. Look after yourself, set your goals, get out there, start smashing it. See you soon.
Easy, mate.